بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. We continue our discussion about ethical relativism. Last week we mentioned some of the objections about descriptive ethical relativism, about meta-ethical relativism, and normative ethical relativism. Today we want to expand on this topic. I wanted also to share with you some of the discussions from the book Ethical Relativism, but because I don't have the file is with the publishers, and I have the file that I sent them, but I have to look for it. But then they made, typesetting, etc. Maybe, inshallah, I make picture of some pages, inshallah, for the next session, which seems to be our last session, inshallah, to share with you. So, we said most of the people, in a way or other, benefit from differences and diversity that exists in the world about values, about morals, etc. This is their main point. And I mentioned that how they mention examples like Eskimos, like, I don't know, some people in some islands who think that helping is not good or cooperation is not good. And then I said also that they can be radical version or more moderate, more modest version. We discussed many things. Inshallah, you will read, or you have already read the paper in Farsi. But one thing that I thought maybe we can reflect on it before we go to meta-ethical relativism is about the difference between morals and customs. I told you last time that sometimes people don't distinguish between morals and customs, and when they see customs are different, like, for example, whether to wear black clothes or white clothes when there is funeral or when there is, mourning session, and things about this. For example, in some places, if you have been given food, if it is enough, then the way you behave is different. In some cultures, you have to finish the food, because if you don't finish, they think you didn't like it. In some cultures, if you finish the food, it means that the food was not enough. You should leave some food, remaining, so that they know there was enough food. So they mention things like this. Or in some cultures, when they bring you drink, if you don't want more, you should make the cup upside down. Otherwise, they keep bringing. So these are differences that are not about morality directly. These are about customs, about etiquettes that can be different among different people. And then we said about, how even those which are about morality, when we go deeper, we see that there are commonalities about Eskimos. about those people who think collaboration is not bad. It's not that they think collaboration is bad. It's that they think people need to work hard. People should not be dependent on others, burden on others. So they are taking one value and highlight it, and maybe they don't pay attention to the other side that much. Some people do the other way around. Anyway, inshallah, you study these things about philosophical arguments that there must have been some commonalities, otherwise humanity could not continue, like the way parents should respect, love and care for children, like respect of children for parents. But if you go to the page 11 of the paper, which is now on the screen, and for those who cannot read Farsi, I will explain in English. So here there is a discussion, brief discussion, and I have expanded on this in the last chapter of the book, about differences between morality and customs, adab wa rusum. The first difference I mentioned here is it seems that both morals and customs help us with regulating our actions. But the difference is that morals not only help us to regulate our actions and bring harmony to society, but they also help us towards our ideals. In morality, you must have some ideals, or at least one ideal, and you want to move towards that. According to the teleological view, there is an ultimate end. Morality always has a kind of indication towards ideal or ideals. But in customs, maybe there is no reference to ideals. Maybe. Yes, if customs are mixed with morality, they also indicate ideal or ideals. But etiquettes, customs as such may not refer to ideals. For example, if one type of funeral is taken in a society as respect for dead relatives, and in another is taken as disrespect for the deceased, here it's not funeral, it's not customs about funeral. It's customs mixed with a value, which is respect for the deceased. When customs are mixed with values, that's different. But if customs are just to themselves, for example, white or black clothes, both of them can lead towards our ideals. There is no morality involved here. The next point is that when it comes to morality, normally we need to make more efforts. This is a very important point. Normally you need to overcome your own desires, lower desires, your selfishness. You need to do some sacrifice in order to equip yourself with moral virtues and bring moral actions. It's not always easy to be moral. But with customs, it's very easy, in the sense that everyone is prepared for observing those customs, and when you do it, people clap for you and encourage you. If you don't do it, actually you will then be questioned by people, why you didn't observe this custom in our society or culture or family. There is no need for resisting against your temptations, against your selfishness, etc. So observing customs as such means by themselves do not necessarily raise you in the degrees of humanity and being virtuous. The third difference which I have mentioned is that customs are always social, but morality has social dimension as well as personal, individual dimension. Morality can be about your relation with yourself, your relation with your Lord, even when you live alone, when you are at home or you are totally alone in a cave, for example, still morality applies to you, but maybe customs don't apply to you. So these are three differences I mentioned. If you have more differences in mind, or you can study and find more differences, please share with me so that we can expand on this important area. Now, this was just remaining from discussion about ethical descriptivism or descriptive ethical relativism. Now we go to meta-ethical relativism. I have said here that different arguments are presented or can be thought to support meta-ethical relativism. In the footnote, I have said that in the book Ethical Relativism, I have mentioned 11 grounds for meta-ethical relativism. I have tried to exhaust whatever has been said and whatever could be said, and I came up with 11 grounds. From pages 60 to 108, this discussion can be found. Inshallah, I will send you some pictures of this part for next week. Accurate study, careful study of these arguments show that the main support for meta-ethical relativism is the existence of fundamental differences. Fundamental is very important, as I told you. They mean by fundamental something that cannot be sorted out in an underlying deeper layers. It's just always difference. So existence of such fundamental differences, or in other words, descriptive ethical relativism, is the basis for most of them. Great majority of people who have argued for meta-ethical relativism have referred to these differences and used them either alone or combined with some other premises to argue for meta-ethical relativism. As David Wong has mentioned, the most heated discussion about ethical relativism is centered around this point. Does descriptive ethical relativism support meta-ethical relativism or not? Is there any logical path, avenue, that from descriptive ethical relativism we can reach meta-ethical relativism? Some of these arguments are in this way. Some people solely and only they mention descriptive ethical relativism. So they say because there are lots of different views, there is no single true or most justified morality. Rachel's, in his book, has mentioned one of the best articulations and versions of this approach, which only relies on descriptive ethical relativism. They argue in this way: different cultures have different moral rules. Different cultures have different moral rules. Therefore, there's no other premise. Therefore, there is no objective reality for morality. Right and wrong both only relate to opinions. And opinions can vary from culture to culture. So you see, there is no other thing. And this is what Rachel says is the best explanation of this approach. Different cultures have different rules, moral rules, and therefore, because they have different moral rules, there is no objective reality for ethics. A standard version also receives a standard objection. What is the standard objection? As we said last week, is that there is no straight path to transit from descriptive ethical relativism or existence of differences, fundamental differences, to meta-ethical relativism. When there are different opinions, it doesn't mean that they are equally valid. So that you say because equally valid opinions, there is no one true morality. Who said these opinions are all important, all valid? Difference among opinions needs to be explained. This is a very important point. Any person has to explain these differences. This is why in my book I have a discussion about how you can be not relativist and at the same time explain the diversity and fundamental differences, because this is a reality, this is an experience that we have to explain it. They explain it in their way, which is relativistic. We have to explain it in the way which is not relativistic. Okay, it's a very important discussion. They say because there are different opinions, so there is no unified ground for ethics. But I here said one point. In the book there are many points, but I referred to what Socrates in the essay of Plato, because what we know about Socrates is mostly from Plato. So Plato in Crito refers to a dialogue. And what Socrates says is very interesting. So in Criteria, Crito, like many other classic books, then you have different paragraphs with number. So they have put numbers for each paragraph, and because page can be different from version to version. Dear Crito, why do you pay so much attention to what majority of people think? Because Crito was referring to majority opinion of majority of people. Why you keep referring to the opinion of, when you want to discuss in a scientific issue, For example, what type of understanding of justice is correct? Yeah? Why you just keep referring to the opinion of majority of people? Those who are wisest need to receive more attention. The wisest are not the majority necessarily. So instead of just telling me that this is what majority believe, try to find what the wisest people say, because then you can understand what is the rational approach. So why we should bother about difference in opinions so much that we say because there are differences, then there is no morality at all. There is no true or single true morality at all. Sometimes people disagree because the level of their intelligence, the level of their wisdom, the level of their understanding is different. This is one point. Another point that can lead to differences of opinions is that each of them may have a limited perspective. They may look at the issue from a limited perspective. As Mawlavi says, هر کسی از ظن خود شد یار من. Every person tried to be my friend, but from his own perspective, without knowing what is inside me, what is my secret inside me. They try to help me. Another reason for differences can be differences in other areas. For example, if they have differences in religious beliefs, this can also affect their morality. Or if they have different worldview, jahanbini, it can affect their opinion in morality. In any case, from difference of opinions and beliefs, by no means one can make this conclusion that there is no true morality, there is no single truth. On the other hand, if all people agree on something, we cannot say they must have agreed on the truth. Neither agreement is a proof for truth, nor disagreement is disproof for the truth. Rachel has a beautiful point. I told you last week that I very much like this point. That if there is a truth, there is no guarantee that all people should agree on it. Who said, which person who is master of logic would say that if A exists, then everyone should know and agree and acknowledge. If Earth is circular, or it's like a globe, a ball, why should people agree on this? Actually, for centuries, people agreed on the opposite, apart from the prophets and maybe few people. All people of the world thought that Earth is flat. Maybe relativists try to respond by saying that the issue of Earth being flat or not, it's a scientific issue, it's an empirical issue, and here you should always observe and then correct your opinion. But when it comes to moral beliefs, they have nothing to do with facts. They have nothing to do with realities. The answer is why you make this distinction. What is the proof? First of all, who said that morality is not based on the facts? Yes, maybe they are not empirical facts, but they are facts. Maybe they are not, as we say in philosophy, mafahim mahuvi and ma'qulat ula, but maybe there are ma'qulat thaniya. But anyway, morality is based on objectivity. Plus, even if morality is different in nature, how do you argue that difference of opinions means there is no single correct opinion, and agreement means there is one single? Who said this? This is one way to only use differences as the basis for arguing for meta-ethical relativism. Sometimes they add to this another premise, and with two premises they try. I mentioned here two versions. One is, they say, there is nothing other than de facto morality. What is important for us is de facto morality. You should not trouble yourself looking for different morality, looking for a morality which is ideal and everyone should accept, etc. Who are the people who say like this? These are normally some anthropologists and sociologists who are not philosophical. Now, I'm not saying all of them, but many of them, they are not necessarily philosophical. They are not philosophically trained. They collect information and data. They take pictures, they interview people, they visit. With such methodology, you shouldn't expect these people to be evaluating and judging which one is right, which one is wrong, or is there any one truth, or more than one truth. They only understand or concerned about reporting what is there. So for them, de facto morality is the main thing. But for a philosopher of ethics, de facto is important, but is not the proof. Like, for example, suppose in fiqh, for example, for a faqih, it is important how people make their, for example, hajj. It's important. But faqih is not going to make his fatwas based on how people make hajj. He's going to base his fatwa based on evaluation of the original texts, not de facto performance of hajj. You understand the difference? And as I said before, ethical relativism went to its very high position at the peak when lots of travels took place. Lots of anthropologists went to other cultures when the colonialists went. So many scientists went, many social scientists went, and they were surprised with the diversity. But a philosopher would not judge based on diversity that he would see outside. It's very important. Of course, philosopher is taking them into account, but doesn't take them as a proof. So I said this type of opinion is normally developed by some anthropologists or people who do social sciences. Based on their expertise, based on their interest, they deal with empirical things. This is their methodology. Their aim is different from philosophers. So, in any case, for a moral philosopher, it's not convincing at all to say that morality is what people believe. A philosopher would not accept that morality is what people believe. And since people have different beliefs, so there are different moralities. The second way that I mentioned here for combining descriptive ethical relativism with an additional premise, yeah? The second way is this. They say that all moral principles receive their validity by cultural acceptance. What validates them is cultural acceptance. Poyman calls this dependence theory. Of course, if you study books, they may not, mention these arguments very clearly, 1, 2, 3. I have tried to see what arguments they have used, and then I brought them to my own system. So when I say, independent or, mixed, and then two versions for mixed, you may not find it exactly like this. You may find that one just mentions this one, one mentions the previous one. Anyway, according to dependence theory, which says moral principles take their validity from cultural acceptance, then if people accept this view, this is valid. If other cultures accept another view, that is valid too. And if something you think is correct but no one accepts, no culture accepts, that has no value. Because we say maybe morality is something which is unfortunately missed, forgotten. We have to discover it. But for them, no, there is no such a thing. Every action should be considered in the context of goals, desires, beliefs, history, and environment of that society. So we can put his argument in this, or this argument in this way. Moral principles vary from culture to culture, and morality is rooted in culture. So if morality is rooted in culture, takes its validity from cultural acceptance, and it varies from culture to culture, so we should accept that we have different moralities. This culture has this morality as its fruit, that culture has another morality at its fruit, and you cannot say which one is better, or which one is right, which one is wrong. And this means, this implies something very important. There are no universal moral principles that all cultures have to accept. If you say morality is validated by the culture, then morality cannot be forced on other cultures. Also, then there is no sense of talking about reform as well. Why you reform morally? Because you feel that there is a difference, there's a distance between your values that the people in that culture are observing, and the real ones, the ideal ones. So you try to improve. You need moral reforms. But according to this view, morality is not something ideal. Morality is not something independent. Morality is not something that we have to struggle to reach. Morality is coming from what we do. It's the fruit of our society, our culture. So why this culture then should reform for moral improvement? Doesn't make sense. It's a problem. Now, if we want to evaluate this argument in another to mentioning these consequences, we say it has two premises. One is descriptive ethical relativism, we already talked about it. Second is this cultural dependence. Morality is validated by the culture. What's the argument for that? How can you prove that? If you want to say this happens, most of people take their morality from their school, from their media, from politicians, from conversations on the street, from what parents tell them. Yes, maybe this is the way most of people understand, but morality is different. And this is why you have in every society people who call for reform, for change, for improvement. You see societies that used to, for example, allow for racism or for slavery, they don't do it anymore. And you cannot say, please listen carefully. You cannot say when they used to do a slavery or they had racism, it was good. Now it's different time. Now not having a slavery is good. But they are equally good, equally virtuous, equally moral, because they did what their culture was telling them. You say no. Every person understands that an improvement has taken place. Everyone from that society understands that what they used to do was wrong. It's not that they say, yes, we used to do nice things, but now time has changed, we do other nice things. No, they are critical. And actually, because of lots of efforts, lots of people who maybe even gave their lives, they managed to change. If we go by this theory, these people who call for moral reforms are doing wrong things because they are causing disturbance. People are happy with that morality that they have. Even, for example, if you look at, for example, Jahiliyyah, the time of Jahiliyyah before Islam. Okay, they had their own morality and no one should disturb them. They used to bury alive their daughters. Okay, that was the result of their culture. It was good. They had a slavery. They were mistreating women, slaves, etc. They were looting other tribes. That was good, because that was what that culture accepted. So it doesn't match with our understanding of morality. Here I have mentioned some of these consequences that I told you. So inshallah you can study yourself. And maybe one thing extra, which is here, I didn't mention, is that, for example, if a new issue arises, nowadays, for example, there's discussion about genetically modified food, GM foods, or for example about cloning, etc. These are new issues. According to this view, why we should bother to have a moral opinion about them? Let people do it At the moment, because it's new, there is no moral judgment about them. There is no moral opinion about them. Let people do, and then later we will see what people of this culture are going to think about them. Right now, there is no moral reservation because there is no opinion for these people. But this is not what we accept. We say no. Morality is something real, and now we should understand these new issues in the light of morality. We need to discover what morality says about them. This is very clear. Then in the paper there is a discussion about normative ethical relativism, evaluation. Previously in the paper I have explained what does it mean. Now it's evaluation. As you remember, these are the people who say we should not pass judgments on practices of or opinions of others who don't share with us their morality. So if someone belongs to another culture or society which has different morality, I cannot judge about them. If they don't act according to their own system, yes, you can say they are doing something wrong. But if they don't act according to my system, why I should give myself right to judge about them? This is normative ethical. And then also based on that, you should not also intervene, you should not interfere, and you should not impose. This is normative ethical relativism. This has a long history, but according to Bernard Williams, he says this was popular among some colonialists that were liberal, and they would try to respect others. You know, we talked about this idea of liberalism last week. David Wong has a good point here. He says it is not only result of, relativism. Actually, there is something in many Western cultures which is a kind of contract-based system, a kind of negotiation-based system added to liberalism. And therefore, people are expected to discuss with others and find some or agree on some common terms. I cannot expect others to be like me because they also then would expect me to be like them. If I want to be free, I should allow other people to be free. Therefore, it's better not to talk about each other in a critical way. Like two superpowers. They can, enjoy their freedom, and they don't want to be told, what to do, what not to do. But if they want to do this, they should also respect this for the other superpower. We don't say anything about you, you don't say anything about us. And because they are equally powerful, they can do this. But if one party is, then weaker, then this is not going to work, because then the one who is higher say, I do what I want, and I don't let you also to do what you want. You have to do what I say, or at least you must not disregard major things in my view. Little things, okay. So when it's based on contract and negotiation, these problems can happen. In any case, Wong says that normative ethical relativism was very much promoted among some anthropologists, and they were aware of diversity, and they didn't want one group impose on others. They were nice people, and they, but to be nice is okay, but not to sacrifice the truth. If someone is doing something wrong, I shouldn't, say there is no truth because I don't want to upset that person. Yes, I should be nice by not interfering, by not imposing, but we should say, let us all work for discovering the truth. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe you are wrong. Maybe we are both wrong. Let us discover the truth. But to say, forget, there is no truth because I want to be nice. Do whatever you want. This is then a kind of extremism. Poyman says, Melville Herskowitz is the most well-known anthropologist who believes in normative ethical relativism. He has a book on cultural relativism, and he says metaethical relativism requires tolerance. You have to be interculturally tolerant. So you see, he argues from metaethical relativism for normative ethical relativism. He says every morality becomes valid in relation to its own culture, the host culture. Therefore, there is no independent basis for moral judgment among cultures. This culture has its own morality. Morality comes and originates from that culture. Another culture has its own morality. Its morality comes from that culture. We don't have something which is shared among all cultures so that we can then have universal judgments. So what should we do? We should tolerate each other. I said, as much as my research shows, I'm not saying that there is nothing else, but as far as I have seen and researched, the proponents, adherents to normative ethical relativism, whether they are anthropologists or not, they use descriptive ethical relativism or meta-ethical relativism in order to argue for normative ethical relativism or the principle of tolerance. I have not seen so far any argument which doesn't use these two or one of them. An independent argument that regardless you accept descriptive ethical relativism or meta-ethical relativism, they argue for normative ethical relativism. I have not seen that. It always comes as a fruit of descriptive ethical relativism or meta-ethical relativism or both. So the problems that we already said about descriptive ethical relativism and meta-ethical relativism, those problems apply here as well because they use these two as their basis. We don't want to repeat those problems. We want to now focus on this theory as the extra point that it has. So one way is to question the basis. We already have done it. In addition to that, we want to see what is extra here and what are extra problems here. One problem is this. We mentioned also this last week. Extra problem is that why you are asking everyone from every culture to be tolerant, to accept this principle of intercultural tolerance. Why? If morality is originating from culture and it's validated by its own culture, how did you manage to find something which is universally binding, universally obligatory? It seems there is no consistency here. You are refuting yourself. If someone belongs to a culture that says, I believe that morality is universal, or I believe that I am responsible for other human beings and I have to do something. I'm not going to fight them, I'm not going to kill them, but at least I have to get engaged in discussion with them. I have to tell them that what you are doing is wrong. We should discuss, we should argue. Suppose today Socrates is there. Of course, he is from Greek culture, but can Socrates today, for example, talk to people from other cultures? Can't he have dialogue and discussion and, argument, moral argument with people from China or US or Asia or Middle East or Africa? Or we should say, just talk to the Greek people about morality. Don't talk about morality to other people. Why? What is important and we accept is that we live in a world that peace is very important. We live in a world that we need to avoid conflict and tensions as much as possible. And if different cultures want to impose their ideas on others, there will be always war, there will be always conflict, there will be no solidarity, no peaceful coexistence. Whether you are right or wrong, whether you are true or not, even if you are a believer in religion and you believe that your religion is revealed by God, there are other people who have similar idea about their religion. You need to understand how practically work together without compromising about your faith. You can be faithful, but you cannot expect everyone accepts your faith and faith values in a mixed world. Nowadays, even inside the same society, sometimes there are mixed faithful people. For example, in many Western countries, there are Muslims, there are Christians, there are Hindus, there are Buddhists, there are atheists. Even here it's difficult. One culture say, everyone else should listen to me or, act as I say. Even to condemn them can create sometimes problems. On the other hand, if you say, we have no judgment about them, we should close our eyes, we should not, discuss, we should not argue for what is better, this is not also productive. So we have to find a way that we can maintain respect, peaceful coexistence, harmony in the society or in the whole world, and at the same time have honest exchange about moral issues with modesty, with humility. I am very much amazed with these ayat of the Quran about dialogue without preconditioning. Allah says, قُلْ إِنَّا أَوْ إِيَّاكُمْ لَعَلَى هُدًى أَوْ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Tell them, it's Allah saying to the Prophet, to his messenger. He doesn't say, tell them you must, listen to me because Allah has sent me. You are misguided and I have to guide you. No, Allah says, قُلْ إِنَّا أَوْ إِيَّاكُمْ. Tell them, either we or you. لَعَلَى هُدًى أَوْ فِي are guided or misguided. Even doesn't say either we or you are guided, or either you or us are misguided. because one O was enough, one or was enough. But to make it quite flexible and without any, bias, says either we or you are guided or misguided. Let us accept this as a working ethos and then work together. But if I want to talk to them as someone who is guided and the other party is misguided, and I always have this in my mind, and this comes from my words and from my behavior out, that I am dealing with misguided people and I want to change them, this is not going to work, because he would think also the same about me. So this is different from normative ethical relativism. I accept this much, but I don't accept that we should, be accepting normative ethical relativism so that we can have tolerance. Then I have mentioned this idea that Wong says about the liberal contractualist ethics, which we have already, alhamdulillah, discussed. And also said that one problem that can rise is this, that sometimes we see, unfortunately, in some liberal cultures, because they say things are based on contracts and based on expectations. So if it is, for example, in my society, I have to observe all the rights of labor, all the rights of the customers, because they expect this. This is our social, contract. But for example, if I am hiring someone in a country which is not developed, then I can hire children. Maybe in my country, children under a certain age cannot be employed, but in that culture, it's okay. Actually, they are very happy that even a child can bring some money. Office hours here is 8 hours, but over there, for example, is 16 hours. Okay, they don't expect anything more. I am just giving them what they expect, and actually I give them a little bit more, and they are very happy to work for me. This is unfortunately happening. I am dealing with people who belong to another culture, they have another moral system, and just what I need to do to make sure that they don't feel mistreated. It's not that I have to observe universal requirements for fair trade or fair treatment. And I say this is wrong. Even if the other party doesn't understand or doesn't have expectation, you need to do what is right in your moral system. You cannot discriminate and say because this person doesn't understand or doesn't have better choice, it's okay for me because he doesn't belong to my moral system. So this is also something that I have mentioned here. And I have said that, alhamdulillah, now there are many companies, many groups, many campaigns for fair trade. And they try to improve the conditions of life of people in other countries and observe morality here. Thomas Scanlon is a very well-known Harvard professor. Alhamdulillah, I met him in a conference, and he has a book which I liked. I'm not saying everything because You cannot agree with someone 100%, but I found some ideas. He has a book, What We Owe to Each Other. It was published in 1999. What we owe to each other. He says, in our treatment of others, we should see what they might expect from us and give to them, but not what they actually want from us only. We have to see what is ma'qul to be asked by them, not what is actually asked, because what is actually asked, maybe it's too little, because they don't know something more than this can be asked. But what is ma'qul, what is reasonable to be asked? And to be reasonable is cross-cultural. It's not relative. So with my understanding of morality, I should be what is reasonable to be asked by them, and even if they don't ask, I should offer. I think this is a very nice point. He also says that we should not interfere despite their desires in their lives. At the same time that we should give them what is reasonable for them to ask, but I should not give myself right to say, okay, democracy is a very good thing, and they don't ask for democracy, but I should give them democracy by sending troops to help them have democracy. No, here you make harm more. Yes, if you think democracy is good for them, okay. In your relation with them, try to observe democracy. And also maybe the most you can do is to educate, to talk, to have dialogue, to show them good examples, but not to impose on them your idea. Okay, I stop here. So inshallah, we have one more session, and inshallah I will try to share with you some pages of the book, and we can discuss inshallah more ethical, because we don't have time to go to another topic. So let us talk more about ethical relativism, and then inshallah this term will finish. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you so much, dear Doctor.
May Allah bless you, inshallah. Any question, any comment?